Codename Spectrum in Operation Red Night by Abstentia and Charles E.P. Murphy. Karachi, Pakistan, midnight, PKT. The underworld spread the word around. Codename Spectrum was back in town. Spectrum, nastiest scalpel on MI6's tray. Spectrum, immortal codename for a series of female wetwork agents dating back to the Second World War. Sex and violence combined in a neat little package that ticked a bit before exploding. Spectrum was everywhere. She could be right behind you at any moment. It was her third time in Karachi this year, maybe the fourth. Each time, somebody died. Last time, the bitch got to an ISI bagman. His car had an accident, just innocent enough nobody could pin it on MI6. The time before that they knew about, an entire militant cell disappeared while two others caught the sort of heat you only get when someone snitched. The underworld set to twitching, tectonic tremors among the mugs in the Gulf who wore the targets on their backs. Even the big boys in Kashmir got their tiny trembles in. Codename Spectrum hadn't even been in country a week yet. Moonlighting as newlywed tourist Jane Clapham Butcher, Spectrum acted like every ugly tourist the locals hated to see coming. Every day she was loud, she was obnoxious, and very, very condescending about everything. The water, the food, the heat, the facilities, nagging her poor sorry husband about why he hadn't taken her to a proper country for a proper honeymoon. The perfect cover, somebody everybody ignored because nobody wanted to pay attention. Every night she eavesdropped on a mobile phone they'd cloned through the modern intelligence miracle of the hack. 3 nights of wading knee-deep through chatter about Call of Duty. On the 4th, somebody finally talked logistics without even using code phrases. Truly, the Brothers of Umar were a terrorist organization guided by an idiot, full of online videos and angry threats signifying less than a drunk clown. What happened to them was meant to be a warning to all the other loud, furious idiots. The 5th night found her running, leaping, parkouring hardcore across an industrial estate's rooftops, skin-tight blue catsuit and face mask, dum-dum loaded pistols on her hips, and a stun grenade in one pocket. Karachi teemed with people, merchants and mothers and meddlers swimming upstream like so much human salmon. Somebody was bound to spot her. That was the point, really. If MI6's impossibly skilled sex bomb agent ran around without publicly displaying her impossible sex bomb boom abilities, why even have a black ops slush fund to pay her salary? In truth, this was only the 2nd time she'd been in Pakistan this year, and only the 1st as Codename Spectrum. The cell that disappeared, well, she'd sure not been part of the hammer which smashed them into dust. The other 2 cells tore themselves apart from within, a member of one cell snitching on another over a matter of who could really say. Honest Ahmed's car? That had been an accident. He let the brakes get worn down to fuck and ended up on the wrong end of a van running through a busy intersection. The target tonight, a carpet factory where one of the brothers daylit as a security guard. By day, the ears of laborers were deafened by the clatter of 1,000 industrial looms mass-producing one-of-a-kind ancient Persian rugs to be sold in the finest boutiques in London, New York, and just down the road. Tourists were chumps. By night, musty silence. All in all, it made for a secure meeting place and storage for the brothers' slowly growing collection of armaments and delusions of competence. There was a fence, of course, but Spectrum scaled it. Barbed wire, but she snipped it. Another security guard, but a devastating scissor kick to his head dropped him like a Greek stock exchange. At the skylight, she paused, a detached god calculating the most satisfying way to smash the little fleshy figures milling about below. Spectrum took off her mask. Spectrum threw a stun grenade down into the warehouse and counted 5. Spectrum followed it down. Spectrum's face was ripped off her head by a rattling burst of semi-automatic fire. She hadn't seen the gunman. 2 hours later, back in Vauxhall Cross, the alarms started ringing. Chapter 1. London, United Kingdom, 2305 GMT. C, Sheila Kennedy reflected, had probably seemed old as a child. Here and now in his dotage, he was a living embodiment of that old saying about the good dying young. Those lizard eyes of his, dried out and dusty green like something with big teeth hiding in tall grass to devour the hapless, were half closed as if waiting for the right prey. Those scratched bifocals slipped from the low red bulb of his nose, threatening to fall to the table at any time, ensuring in the meantime looking at anybody who spoke meant he was looking down his nose. And the suit. Oh Christ, the suit! In a room full of craven climbers wearing the best bespoke to be found on Savile Row, C wore something shapeless, 2 sizes too small, and clearly fresh from the discount racks at Oxfam. Even on a good day, he looked like some cyclopean beast roused from hibernation to pass judgment on the latest cloud of damn fool gnats strafing his wrinkled head. On a bad day, he sat forward in his chair, placed his palms on the table, and looked so far down his nose half the room wondered if he'd get vertigo. Palms on the table meant C was unhappy. When C was unhappy, everyone was unhappy. C was committing the smooth, cold top of the conference table to his hand's memory today. The Star Chamber, officially the Executive Office, formerly the Shadow Cabinet, colloquially the Board, the Old Boys, at one time the Circus when a C wanted to make a point about infighting, had found itself pulled away from dinner, TV, and mistresses by a demon bell tolling from the confines of their agency-issue BRAC phones. Spectrum down, all hands out of the pool. Not for the first time, not even for the 10th time, Sheila wished she'd never bloody taken the job with the Islamic Terror Office. Sheila Kennedy was in her late 40s, but dressed to kill, and after an hour in front of the mirror, she passed for early 40s. The Star Chamber was that kind of workplace. "This isn't the first time a Spectrum has been killed," she said again louder, hoping she could make that fact seem less important through sheer confident volume. "We can salvage the situation. While we don't know the brothers' target yet, I've still got agents on the ground." "Never mind that, Sheila." Reed St. John Boyce was the head of the Internal Support Office, a true blue prat who looked and acted like he'd been Frankenstein together in a Black Ops laboratory, using pieces of every prat from the entire Oxbridge system in order to make the biggest prat in all the Isles. Was he smart enough to be here? He worked in government intelligence and had no idea everyone had been calling him Boise behind his back since primary school. What else could you say, really? "Speckies are supposed to be MI6's top killers, Sheila. It's okay for them to die heroically while saving Queen and country from a dire existential threat." He watched Sheila now with the same lean, hungry look a cannibal might use to watch all the free-range cattle milling about a tube station. "One getting shot in the face by a fat moron with a fat twitch reflex? That damages the brand." "Yes, because that's something I really could have prevented, you brat." "Accidents will happen, Reed." C's basilisk gaze now turned to regard her. For a moment, between blinks, she thought his pupils actually looked like slits. "It was an accident, wasn't it, Miss Kennedy?" Even his voice sounded like an insurance adjuster burning forever in the fiery pit. "My people laid all the groundwork, sir. Spectrum was as prepared as any agent could be without tipping her hand. We're working on the report now, which should dispel your concerns." She didn't know if that was true, but you had to back up your office. Sure, at times like these, the little bastards always sized up your back for the softest spot to stick the knife, but loyalty to your troops was still the first thing they taught you. "There certainly isn't another concern." C continued to stare. "And we're quite certain it wasn't a leak?" The temperature in the room, already frigid, became Antarctic. Leaks happened. Everybody knew leaks happened. Nobody ever said it so blatantly. You worded it discreetly, a quiet word in a near-deaf ear. You never said it out loud in front of the whole damn Star Chamber. That was as good as assigning blame, and then some poor bastard was manning a clandestine radar station in Siberia even the Russians didn't care to shut down. Not even Boise knew where to put his face after C said leak, and Sheila was struggling to keep her face from breaking. She thought about her answer very carefully. "It's not very likely, sir. The brothers are nobodies. If we did have a leak in Pakistan, they'd be leaking to someone with money. We've seen the brothers' outgoings. It's all games and ammunition and porn. The porn probably isn't a way of laundering payoffs." C continued to stare. Sheila could feel her legs turning to stone. You couldn't read a word of him while you knew he had memorized every volume of you and was preparing his negative review. "Mr. Boyce is correct," he said. "A new spectrum must be activated. There's a message which needs sending." "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. We have one ready and waiting, sir. Who looking really impressive to see. Who've I got? Who?" She remembered a folder her personal assistant had slipped into her briefcase before she headed down the hall for the bollocking to end all bollockings. Khan. Khan, who'd been recruited after she'd artfully dodged official IDs after 2 of their agents in Piccadilly, then dodged their pursuit artfully until she got bored and chucked the badges right into their faces. Khan, who'd cleared training on a technicality because what she lacked in discipline and basic human empathy, she made up for with killer aim. Khan, until this very moment, an agent marked out for the kind of disciplinary crackdown that made field agents of upper management and janitors of field agents. Well, C could find that out on his own time. Sheila had absolutely no intention of volunteering that. She retrieved the dossier from her briefcase and slid it across the table with a finger which absolutely did not twitch uncontrollably. This may be our new Spectrum, sir. Ayesha Khan. She's logged dozens of hours on previous missions in Pakistan, not to mention India, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan. She also helped us solve a joint office problem we had in Rome. She nodded at Chris, head of the friendly office, who nodded back. She even earned a citation for that one. Chris looked down at that as if trying to find a scraper to rub her off his boot. Dirty bastard coward. Sheila continued. Khan has just the sort of independent problem-solving skills one values in this line of work, such as independently liberating material from the Quartermaster Corps to solve the Roman problem with a prejudice that had outstripped extreme the way the sun outshone a torch. She'd seen the after-mission footage and feared the images would haunt her until her deathbed. C could find all that out on his own too. And she always gets her man. And if they were really lucky, one of the men might get her too. London, United Kingdom, 0100 hours GMT. When Ayesha Khan awoke, the night's prey was still wrapped around her and, drooling all over her back during the night. Dried and stiff and right over the scar left over from a bar fight she'd started in secondary school, which went from thrown drinks to broken bottles. Well, that salivation wouldn't stand. It was easy enough to slip out of his arms in his expensive-looking silk sheets without waking him. Thank God his taste in shower soap was much better than his taste in bedding. Much better than his taste in furniture and decor, too. Man pulled a high six-figure salary, and all he could think to buy with it was black leather, chrome tubes, and glass. Men. Awful hairy beasts, men, and small besides. That wasn't a question of physical dimension, it was a question of mental horizon. When she'd picked this one up, Master of the Universe, Adam, or Daniel, or Alec, or something else to be forgotten, he'd been so cocksure and controlling and emitted the usual platitudes about male prowess she'd been immune to before she was born. Obviously, he wasn't great. City traders never were. But ensnaring one of the so-called masters of the so-called universe, even if it left her wanting, still provided its own measure of thrills. It was the work of minutes to take that pride and turn it against them, put them on their knees, teach them to pray to the only goddess that mattered, as it were. Once she'd washed herself off, she slipped back into the same businesswoman smart casual wardrobe she'd come in with. She'd folded it carefully and set it aside on a clean table before beginning. Surely he wasn't worth sacrificing her style for, was he? Button up, brush away lint, check the work phone, a flop of the line Brack phone that had been free and still a ripoff. And there was a text. The text was in Welsh, the code language for the serious shit, and translated into... She had been looking for a promotion. London, United Kingdom, 2:35 GMT. When Ayesha Khan walked into the meeting room, all eyes met her at the glass door, especially the eyes of the oily one with the bright teeth. She was already toned, taut, laid out like a sharp stiletto wrapped in red lips. Now she had the makeup and styling which said she'd spent 45 minutes glamming out before showing up for a late-night national security meeting. Because she had. Sorry about the delay. She'd inclined her head in the direction of the ogre in the cheap black suit, the barest gesture of fealty you could get away with in one of these meetings. My Brack phone just wasn't picking up a signal. Always a plausible story. Save C, the man all openly stared at her, most especially with a hot under-the-collar cretin with teeth like a Prince Charles caricature. She tried not to smile. Easy. Brack won a competitive contract, said the lecher with the chemically whitened teeth. Boise, she thought his name was. He's a peer of the realm, for God's sake, and a true British success story. The last Spectrum, said Kennedy, before Boise could say anything else they'd all regret hearing, was retired this morning while attempting to identify and liquidate a key target. The Star Chamber needs somebody to close out her remaining accounts. Give Kennedy that much, the woman had the "oh fuck, I'm so demoted" waver in her voice under control. Khan barely heard it, and she was really listening. As you say, Khan said and smiled. She showed a lot of teeth. Mom. And since the brothers of Umar killed the Spectrum, they're obviously more than the warning example we'd originally intended them to be. Maybe it was just a lucky shot, Khan said in the same glib tone people used to say, shit happens. By an amazing coincidence, that was precisely what she meant. Mom. We've discussed that possibility, said Kennedy. Tone of her voice said not a single person there had seriously considered it. The brothers must have some backing. Uncover it. If the opportunity presents itself, you're authorized to close out their accounts as well. Just find out what they know first, said the man with the iridescent grin. Khan found herself wondering if that thing would light up a Geiger counter. Spectrum's partner, said Kennedy, was Agent Harry Fitzpatrick. His cover is William Clapham Butcher, honeymooning newlywed whose wife died in a tragic traffic collision. That was, Khan thought, certainly one way to euphemize getting smashed in the face by hot shards of supersonic metal. If you had a highly refined, or totally non-existent sense of irony, that was. Yours is Mary, his dead wife's sister, who's dropped everything and flown to Pakistan to help him with the arrangements in his hour of darkness. There may be a problem with this cover identity, said the very un-Caucasian woman. You can come up with a story, was the way Sheila said. The passport boys fucked up and were too pressed for time. Liaise with Fitzpatrick. Use him however you like. Oh, I will. And remain in contact with us. By Brack phone, added the cretin. I'd prefer to use a smartphone, she said. Sir. We have full confidence in our new encryption protocols, added Pearly White Choppers in a tone that made her want to chop those pearly whites out of his with an axe handle. She settled for a controlled nod. The pallid ogre at the head of the table shifted in his seat, the first movement he'd made since she entered the room. Make an example of them, he said, and the title's yours. Khan smiled. England expects, sir. This concludes this excerpt of Codename Spectrum in Operation Red Night by Ian Abstentia and Charles E.P. Murphy. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please support the authors by purchasing Operation Red Night on Kindle at your earliest convenience.